a really sad thing to admit and a hard thing to feel that I believe a lot of people, especially in their mid to late 20s, early to mid 30s even, often feel. And that is the feeling that our lives didn't turn out the way that they were supposed to. That when we were younger, we had this vision for ourselves. We had this confidence that we were going to be something. We felt as though we were destined for greatness almost, that we had all the talent and potential in the world to accomplish our dreams, because that's what we were told, by well-meaning adults, by the media, by society, that if you put your mind to something, you can achieve it. And you will become this grand vision of yourself that you dream yourself to be. And I think it's quite hard when we grow up or we get a little bit older and we look back on our lives and we suddenly get this dreadful feeling that we are behind in life, that we may be living at home with our parents. We aren't in this grand, beautiful relationship. We're not married yet. There are no little ones on the way. No kids are being sprouted. We aren't multi-millionaires with Bugattis and private jets flying us around the world. We aren't world famous and well known for our accomplishments. And we just feel as though we've let ourselves down. Perhaps some of you watching this video, as I mentioned, do stay at home with your parents still. Maybe do not have current work or a job. It just feels as though you're a failure and that you're a loser and that the game's over. You feel as though you've missed the boat and that life is forever just going to continue, and there's no hope in us ever becoming that idealized versions of ourselves that we once dreamed ourselves to become. I've been feeling this way a lot lately, and I recently went out with some new friends of mine and had a conversation with a guy who is just about to turn 40, and I've just turned 30, and so obviously I wanted to pick his brain, and I said, what is it like to be finished with your 30s, the decade that I've just embarked on, because when I turned 30, I just felt this overwhelming sense of existential dread. I felt as though my youth was over, and again, all these feelings that I just described, as though I hadn't achieved the potential that I wanted to achieve. And what this guy said to me really stuck, and it made me really reframe this whole problem of not fulfilling one's potential and not living up to these expectations that we and society have for us. And he said to me, Niall, when you realize that there really are no rules to this life, then you'll be free of judgment, expectation, and your own criticism. And it was just like that I cut through the noise and I realized he's right. Sure, objectively speaking, there are people in life that are so-called, quote-unquote, ahead of you and I in terms of metrics. Maybe they have more money than you, their relationship, the job, so on and so forth. But the part that we are all missing and we so conveniently forget to see is that these things, these achievements, are nowhere to be found in any rulebook or handbook for life. And quite honestly, if you were to look at yourself, your current situation, and your dream for life, you might realize upon further scrutiny that these things you so desperately want to have and achieve might not even be things that you truly want for yourself. Yet you feel like a failure for not having those things: the car, the money, the girls, the status. And perhaps instead of questioning why we do not have these things in the first place, we should question why we should want these things and what is it that we actually want. Because there really are no rules to this lifetime. You can do whatever you want. Nobody is stopping you from doing pretty much anything that your heart desires. Sure, there are rules: no murder, no robbing, the basic human decencies. But other than that, You can be, say, do, go for, dream of anything you want. You may not get those things. The outcomes may not be in your control, but you are free to live this life in any way that you want to live it. And at the end of this journey, there is going to be nobody there that says to you, where's your mansion? Where's your wife? Where's A, B, and C? You need these things in order to have succeeded. No, that doesn't exist. But we so often forget that this is the truth. Life has 0 rule books. And this realization should honestly set you free today. Going back to the example of, yes, there may be people that have more than you, quote unquote, people with money and the dream job and the wife. How do you know that those people that have succeeded by society's standard, how do you know that they are truly happy? How do you know that these things that they got are what they actually wanted, or that these people are now stuck with the responsibility of their situation, the pressure of these expectations that were once set on top of them, and are maybe trapped in a life that they did not design for themselves simply because they were told that that is what they should want and that they should have those things? You hear it all the time. People with money, status, fame, that have everything, at least on paper. People that are miserable. People that honestly take their own lives. You know, you always hear about the famous musician or Hollywood actor that ended up losing their lives. And everybody says, I don't understand. He was rich, he was happy, he was successful, he was hot. What happened? Expectations, unrealistic pressures, and believing that there were rules to be achieved is what was wrong. This false narrative that you need to be a certain way, that you need to say certain things, appear to the world in certain statures, have and achieve certain milestones. It is these false narratives and expectations that make us miserable. But what if we decided to get rid of all this nonsense? What if we decided that this is my life? I don't need to measure up to any yardstick that people set for me. And as long as I am achieving the things and putting in the actions that I deem worthwhile and valuable and worthy of my own respect, then that is what will make me happy and satisfied with the outcomes of my life. I love the quote by Tyler Durden in the famous Fight Club, where Tyler says, "It's only when we lose everything that we are free to do anything." There is beauty in the struggle. There is a sense of freedom that you get from being the 30-year-old loser who lives at home with his parents, that doesn't have a full-time job, that isn't being monitored by a needy and possessive girlfriend. There are freedoms to that life. Sure, there are meaningful things to be gained from being in healthy relationships, money to be made in jobs, but the people with all these different responsibilities, with kids and houses, etc., will never be as free and able to do pretty much anything that they want when compared to the guy that is deemed a loser in society. Because again, it is these narratives and these illusory kind of pressures that we put on ourselves that prevent us from truly taking risks, from truly living life to the fullest, by getting ourselves out there, putting ourselves in situations that are uncomfortable, but situations that we could gain massively from, moments that we could experience that are truly once in a lifetime, traveling that could expand our minds, meeting new and interesting people. You know, when you're a successful, well-to-do father of 5, you know, 5 is a lot, but you get the point. You know, you can't just travel the world and meet whoever you want and show up and risk your reputation. But I'd also like to make the argument in this video, if you are a father of 2 to 5 and you do have a responsible job and you do have all these responsibilities going on, you don't need to be a 30-year-old loser to start taking control of your life. It just takes a little bit of intention. It takes the realization that this is my one life and there are really no rules. You may have built upon these expectations and these responsibilities of your life, but that does not take away the fact that you can still, with whatever freedom you have left, decide the way you want to structure and go about your life. The problem, the real enemy, is we are following society's rules instead of playing our own game of life. We are allowing comparison to creep into our minds because we are bombarded and terrorized by social media, by narratives in the news, in these falsely curated, perfect images of people living their best lives, only posting the highlight reels to their Instagrams, to their TikTok accounts. And us who inhabit these so-called boring and mundane existences, we look at these people, we look at society, and we think, damn, that's the game I should be playing. That's the way I should look and feel and act on a daily basis. Because if I don't, I'm not winning. I'm not succeeding at this game. But again, what if we were to throw out the rules? And remember, it's not about society's expectations. It's not about this mob mentality, this crowd narrative. And realize that it really is about, what is it that I actually want? What game do I want to play with this one game that I've been given? Brilliant quote that I often refer to in my videos is this analogy of Grand Theft Auto. It's like, imagine you were given Grand Theft Auto to play on PlayStation or computer, and after a week you had to return this game to whoever borrowed it to you, and then they asked you at the end of the week, well, what did you do in the game? And you said, well, I behaved, I followed the rules, I collected money, I did the little taxi mission, I went around driving people around, I made money, and I just collected a bunch of money. And they said, well, did you enjoy the game? Did you do what you wanted to do? And they said, no, well, I just took on the mission to get the money and do the taxi job, which is what I thought I had to do. And I collected a lot of money, but that's about it. I didn't really get any of the other experiences in my life. You would look at that person as though they were like absolutely mental, because if you were given a game to only play for a limited time only, for like 1 week, you would explore, you would choose the missions that satisfied you, you would meet characters that intrinsically interested you and fulfilled you and fascinated you. You would investigate your interests and your passions fully, wholeheartedly. But we play the taxi mission, we play the money mission, and we collect things as though these things actually mattered. And that's a massive problem. We need to stop comparing ourselves to these expectations that Instagram and social media crap puts on us, and really decide, what kind of game do I want to play? What game is meaningful and fulfilling to me? Because it really is my opinion, and only my opinion, that fundamentally and truly matters at the end of this game of life. Regardless of these truths that I've hopefully given you more perspective today, that I've hopefully released you from this constant stress and disappointment and fear that you have messed up, that you have ruined your game of life, that you have wasted time. And I know how that feels. I have so much sympathy for you because I feel the same way many times in my life. If this hasn't eased your mind, then I'd like you to consider the final message of today's video. And that is, what if we realize that the game's not over? Sure, you may have made so-called mistakes in your life. You may not have acted according to your own moral compass. You may have done things that you're not proud of. And perhaps you have not fulfilled this idealized potential that you've got for yourself. My challenge to you today is to realize that the game's not over. You are watching this video today at 20 years old, 30, 40, heck, you might be a pensioner. Any age is fine, because any age that you are watching this video today means that you are at an age where you are breathing. You have a day ahead of you. You could have years, maybe even decades ahead of you. And that means that the game is still going. You still have time to pick missions that you want to fulfill, that you want to embark on, destinations you want to see, people you want to meet. Today is the time to get that bucket list together and to realize that it is your game, that it is your life, and that there are no rules to follow other than the ones you set for your damn self. Set your own expectations. Let go of these narratives of being a failure, because failure and success are just states of being. You can be a failure tomorrow and a success next week, and then you could lose it all and become a failure again. None of that matters. What matters is that you are still alive, you are still playing, and you can still make this life absolutely spectacular in any way you want to. You just got to pick up the controller and keep on playing.